conversation with the candidate continues right now.
Welcome back to our conversation with the candidate, Republican Vivek Ramaswamy. We're going to bring in our town hall New Hampshire voters here and have their questions. I might jump in with a quick follow-up here and there and viewer questions from online, but let's get things started right off the bat with Mark Boyd.
Hi, let me be the first this morning to welcome you to New Hampshire.
Thank you.
We hope you've had a wonderful stay.
We have.
And believe me, it doesn't rain every day in New Hampshire.
Thank you.
My question, in New Hampshire, along with the rest of the country, we have a major problem. And that problem is the price for prescription drugs.
Yes.
Americans pay the highest price for the prescription drugs in the world. How will you help lower our prescription drug prices?
Great question. And this is something that's very first personal to me, because I began my career actually in the biotech industry, developing medicines. And I saw from the front lines one of probably the biggest invisible monster that is actually responsible for raising drug prices in this country that almost no one sees. That is the FDA. Okay, the FDA imposes the kinds of hurdles needed to develop a new medicine that make it far more costly than it needs to be. Billions of dollars and over 10 years for a new medicine. That means when that hurdle is that high, that cost gets passed on to the consumer. So when it comes to prescription drugs, especially when it comes to innovative pharmaceutical products, the FDA is something that the next president can actually reform. The second thing we need is more generic competition. Here the FDA plays a different role too. Generics are supposed to hit the market when a patent expires. Companies play a lot of games. Pharma is a corrupt industry, but they only respond to the incentives that they're given by a complex bureaucracy and government. And so I'm going to reform that. I'm going to simplify it, streamline the process for getting new medicines to market. That's great. Maybe the pharmaceutical folks will like that. The part they won't like is also making sure that generics get to market when they're supposed to, rather than being delayed in what is really a corrupt process. And I know how to fix it.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I appreciate it.
Quick follow-up, Mr. Ramaswamy. There, you've got a lot of friends in that industry. How do you tell them no as president?
Well, you know what? A lot of them have actually not necessarily people I would call friends, but competitors and colleagues. My first business was actually built on challenging big pharma. So it was a successful company, but I don't think I made many friends in that process, focusing on developing medicines in areas that pharma had abandoned and really calling out a lot of their cronyism and corruption in the process. I was a young guy for the pharmaceutical industry when I started that company, and so to call me a friend or popular there, I think they respect me, maybe fear me, but I don't think that friends is exactly the language I would use.
Right. Next question from Gary Evans.
Hi. So we have mass shootings in this country every day now. Our elementary schools have active shooter drills. Every nut job in this country can go buy an AR-15 and parade around with it before they decide to discharge it into a school or a synagogue or a church. Guns are the leading cause of death for the children in this country. Your party has blocked every attempt to find a solution to that. What would you do to plan to stop gun violence?
Thank you for that question. So it is true that I am also personally an unapologetic defender of the Second Amendment, because I do think that's what protects all of our other freedoms. Iran, China, other countries, they actually claim to offer the same freedoms we do in our Bill of Rights. The only thing they don't have is a Second Amendment. So I think that's fundamental. However, I don't think we can tolerate in this country another, for example, mass school shooting. I have 2 kids. They're about to be of school age. I think it's unconscionable for us to see another school shooting in this country. The way I want to stop that is by putting 3 armed security guards in every school across this country. When it comes to the root cause of gun violence, even beyond schools, we're suffering a mental health epidemic in this country of historic proportions like we never have. And so I'm focused on addressing that upstream root cause. Per capita, per person gun ownership hasn't gone up by that much over the last 30, 40 years. What has gone up is the mental health epidemic. And I'm very focused, especially in young Americans, solving that problem. For example, as we were just even talking about beforehand, banning social media, addictive social media in kids. That's a big part of what's fueling this mental health epidemic too. So I'm focused on addressing the root causes. And I think that's actually what's going to protect all Americans and then especially protect children. I said I'll shut down the Department of Education. We can use 25% of that budget to put 3 armed security guards in every school across this country. and as U.S. president, I'll do it. Thank you for that question.
Next question comes from Carolyn Morrill.
Hi. First, I'd like to thank you for your positive ad that you had on TV after the horrendous midterms. It was nice to see a refreshing ad.
I appreciate that.
And now I will ask you my question. What is your secret to get Congress to work together?
It's a great question. So one of the things that the U.S. president, I think, has made as a mistake in the past, Republicans and Democrats, is they set an agenda of what they need to get through Congress. I've focused first on what can the U.S. president do on his own with constitutionally ordained executive power. So when I've said I'm going to end race-based affirmative action in America, that's by actually rescinding an executive order that created it under Lyndon Johnson. When I've said I'm going to solve the fentanyl crisis, as the commander-in-chief, I will use our own military to secure our own border rather than somebody else's border somewhere halfway around the world. So a lot of my agenda is actually focused on what the president himself can do. You'll remember that Trump's campaign promise, his top one, was to repeal and replace Obamacare. He couldn't do it because Congress didn't deliver. So that's a big part of where my focus is. Now, I also think that I do have a legislative agenda that can unite even Democrats and Republicans. For example, one of the things I've said is we want to make political expression a civil right in this country. Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't be fired for wearing the wrong hat to work or for posting the wrong thing on social media, the wrong opinion on your own time. That's happening to Americans across the country. And so I say if race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, and national origin are protected classes, then so should political expression too. And that's not a Democrat idea or a Republican idea. It's first principles that unite us. And that's how I plan to lead, not as a Republican in the White House, but as a leader of this country based on the first principles that we all share in common. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick follow-up there, Vivek.
Yes.
If political speech becomes a protected class, what about hate speech?
So I believe that the right answer to bad speech in this country is not less speech. It is more speech. That is the American way. We're not a culture that suppresses and labels certain ideas that can't be expressed. We're a culture that actually says that we will explain to everyone who listens why that idea was actually on the wrong footing. That's the American way. And I think the path to truth runs through more speech, not less. And not everyone agrees on that today, but I think that's one of the basic principles that makes America great. It's one of the basic principles that makes America itself. It's in the First Amendment for a reason. And I'm going to be a president. This used to be a left-wing value. Today it's something conservatives embrace. I don't think this is a red or blue principle. I think it's an American principle. And by the way, funny little secret not a lot of people know, it's actually blue states like California that actually passed political anti-discrimination laws in the 2000s under the President Bush and the Bush era. So when the other shoe fit the other foot, it was actually Democrats who supported it. Today, Republicans embrace it. That's why I think it can actually be a bipartisan consensus that helps revive the ideals that set this country into motion. And that's actually, Adam, how I think we achieve national unity at a time where we could use it.
Next question comes from Kathleen Peterson.
Hi, welcome, and thank you for answering our questions.
Thank you.
My question is, you speak of reviving the ideals that this nation was founded on.
Yes.
What would be your first priority in accomplishing this goal?
Sure. I think it is to impart to the next generation the answer to the question of what it even means to be an American. I'm 37 years old. I'm the first millennial ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican. Okay? I take my responsibility seriously. That's why I go to college campuses. I was at New England College in our last bus tour across the state. I take hard questions, even from college students who may think they disagree with me. Well, we have a 25% recruitment deficit in the U.S. military right now because young people don't want to serve a country that they are taught to hate. So I think one of the things we can do in reforming our educational system is also revive civic education. Think about even immigration. I favor merit-based immigration, but it's not just about merit in terms of making economic contributions. We have to actually test for merit in the civic commitments that people have to this country, understanding something about the Constitution, our history, whether you want to become an immigrant, whether you want to graduate from high school. Those are things that we have to make part of our civic culture in this country again. And part of this is just through leadership in the White House. It's not all through lawmaking. I want to be able to look my two sons in the eye and tell them honestly, without cringing, that I want you to grow up to be like whoever sits in that White House. And I think if we're being honest about this, bipartisan, in a both Democrat and Republican way, I think it's been a long time since we've had a president who we can look our children in the eye and say that I want you to be like him. Ronald Reagan is the last good example I can think of. And I think that's an important part of the U.S. president's job, too. It's not just policy. Policy is important, and we'll talk about it. But I think part of it is the cultural tone of leadership that we set. And one of the things that I'll say that will initially be controversial, but hopefully unites us, is that our diversity is not our strength. Our strength is what unites us across that diversity. The principles that make America itself, the principles that we set into motion in 1776, in places not that far from where we are here in New Hampshire. Ideals like merit, that you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. Free speech, another one of those ideals. The rule of law, the idea that the people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who run the government. These are basic American principles that unite us across our differences. And I think the tone I set in the way that I lead will, yes, take my America First, our America First agenda even further than Trump did. But we will unite the country in the process because we will always tie it back to the why, the principles that made America itself back in 1776. That's what we're going to revive in 2024. Thank you very much for that question.
Thank you, Kathleen. We have a viewer question coming in from online now. Matthew Brown asks, with recent measures with several states to restrict care to transgender people, if Congress sent a bill banning gender-affirming care for minors to your desk, would you sign it?
So I draw a big distinction between minors and adults. For minors, yes, I would. Actually, the last time I was here in New Hampshire, I met two young women, both of whom, when they were teenagers, one of them was 13 years old, two young women, went through double mastectomies, cut off both of their breasts. One of them had a hysterectomy, removing her uterus. Both of them had puberty blockers that effectively mean they will never be the same again. And the sad part is, Adam, they regret it. They will never be the same. They're sharing their stories to make sure that other kids in this country don't make that same mistake. I'll share a fact with you. There isn't a state in this union that allows you to get a tattoo before the age of 18. Why? Because we don't want kids to make permanent changes to their bodies that they will regret later in life. I don't think we should allow kids to go through genital mutilation or chemical castration until they're fully formed adults. Part of living in a free country means that you're free to make decisions as you wish as an adult, but kids aren't the same as adults. Here's what I'll say, though. It's not that I condemn any kid for going through confusion. Far from it. I think we need to be compassionate. Most of the time when a kid, like those two young women who I met, say that my gender doesn't match my biological sex, it means something else is going wrong in their life. And we need to have the courage to be able to ask them what's going wrong at school, what's going wrong at home, and actually have the compassion to help them. Affirming their confusion is not compassion to me. It is cruelty. For most of our history, we've viewed that as a mental health disorder. That's not a stigma. That's actually the first sign to asking how we as adults and leaders can help our children by protecting them. And so that's why I stand on the side of saying no genital mutilation before 18. That's not because I shun anybody. It's actually, I think, the compassionate thing to do for children.
Next question comes from Charles Jesse.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's go back to the military and the role of the president as commander-in-chief. What is your position on continued U.S. support in the Ukraine war?
So as U.S. president, I would not spend any more resources directly supporting Ukraine. That's where I land on that. I believe in giving clear answers. Not all of us have to agree on that, but I think it's the right use case because it doesn't directly relate to American interests. However, I think the number one lesson from Ukraine, and we got to learn it, is that our own energy security is national security. So if America had been a net exporter of energy, as we were as recently as 2019 and 2020, then Vladimir Putin would have never had the leverage to go for Ukraine. Because what he says is, the West and Europe in particular needs me for oil and gas. Well, if the United States was providing that, then Putin would not have had that actual leverage. So energy security is not just economic security. It is national security. And every time something bad happens, and I don't think it was a good thing that Russia invaded Ukraine. It's not like I'm rooting for Russia to win this. I stand for Ukraine pursuing a Ukraine-first policy. Poland should pursue a Poland-first policy. But as a nation, we in America should unapologetically embrace America first and ask what affects our national interests. But I think the number one takeaway from that is that we need to drill, frack, burn coal, embrace fossil fuels, embrace the natural resources, the gifts that God has given us, That is what makes us secure. That is what makes the world safer as well. That's my lesson from it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question.
Next question comes from George Matthews.
Thanks for being here today. Can you tell me your position on abortion?
Sure. And I'll be very clear with you guys, not going to beat around any bushes. I'm unapologetically pro-life. I believe that Roe versus Wade was wrongly decided. I believe that Dobbs correctly overturned Roe versus Wade on constitutional grounds. I will also share with you that I believe more Americans are pro-life in their instincts than will admit it. It's a real case Clarence Thomas brought up. A woman's walking down the street, pregnant woman, if she's assaulted and the unborn child dies, I don't think there's an American I know who says that that person doesn't deserve liability for that death. That teaches me that most of us share some pro-life instincts in common, but we in the pro-life movement need to walk the walk when it comes to being pro-life. What does that mean? Let's talk about adoption and making it easier to have a path to adoption. Let's have an open conversation about childcare for women to make it easier to get to yes, maybe drawn from Social Security later in life to make it earlier when they need it. And then also something Republicans don't talk about enough, greater sexual responsibility for men. In an era of paternity tests, I think we can actually put more of the responsibility, financially and beyond, on fathers. And that makes this, I think, issue less divisive than it needs to be, to say that we're all in this together. We're not just pinning it to you as a woman. We're in this together when we actually say we're pro-life. The other thing that I'll say on constitutional grounds is that if you believe that abortion is murder, murder is regulated by the states. There's no federal murder laws. And so that's why I think the federal government should not have a role in either banning abortion or favoring it. It should get out altogether, which I think is the constitutionally principled position. And I think if that's the approach we take, look, this is never going to be a unifying issue, but it doesn't have to be nearly as divisive as we've made it out to be if we're willing to actually act on principle, even in the pro-life movement. So that's where I am on it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
George. We got about 3 minutes left for TV. We're going to wrap up with Donna Marzullo's question.
Hi. If you were to win the Republican nomination for president, who would you choose for VP and why?
Thank you. So I haven't yet made a decision on that, but I would give strong consideration to even thinking unconventionally. Even someone like RFK Jr., for example, who's running for the Democratic nomination. I think we live in a moment where we can unite this country. Okay, Ronald Reagan did it in 1980, winning in a landslide election. I think there's an opportunity to win in a landslide election in 2024. And I think that's the single most uniting thing we could deliver in our politics. And that's the way I'm going to be thinking, not even as a Republican, but as a member of the pro-American movement. People who want to speak truth and do it unapologetically, can even disagree on some of the small details, but are committed to those basic principles. That is why I'm in this race, to rediscover our shared national identity. And that will go for the vice president to everyone I select in my cabinet as well. We're going to restore truth, and we're going to restore our American national identity. That's what we have an opportunity to do. And that's the way I'll be thinking about the vice presidency.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Can I ask a quick follow-up
Yes.
here as we fill the rest of the time for television? What motivated you to get into this race? Obviously, you've been very successful in business. What made you say, politics, wait a second, I want to try that?
Well, it wasn't even about me. This country has given me great gifts. I've lived the full arc of the American dream. My parents came here as immigrants. I grew up and I built multi-billion-dollar companies after my parents came here with almost no money. I worry, Adam, is that my kids' generation, even if I had been born 20 years later, I don't think that story would have been possible. Not in the same way. I would have been taught to see myself as a victim instead of somebody who overcomes hardship like my parents taught me. So I do think we're in the middle of this national identity crisis. I have a vision for what it means to be American. I want to lead us out of that national identity crisis. And we're taught to believe today that we're a nation in decline. I reject that. I think we're just a little young as a country, going through our own version of adolescence, figuring out who we're really going to be when we grow up. And as a relatively young person myself, that's why I said, even though I'm only 37, even though I'm the youngest person in this field, I'd be the youngest president I'm told ever elected. It's not, I'd be more experienced later, but I actually want to do this to pass on that vision of our country to the next generation. I think our country itself is young, and I'm confident that our best days are still ahead of us, and I'm in this race to remind people of that.
All right. Vivek Ramaswamy, thanks for joining us for Conversation with the Candidate.
Thank you.
For the televised portion,
I appreciate it.
Next week, we're going to have former Vice President Mike Pence on the program. You're going to want to tune in for that. But you can keep watching. We're going to do another 30 minutes with Vivek online and on our mobile app. So we're going to head over there now. But thanks for watching tonight. Have a good one.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.